Bikini Olympia did not go really the way that many people expected. And we're going to dive in. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about literally the top 16 competitors here in this video today. Go over the placings, go over the criteria, what it means for you as a bikini competitor trying to figure out where you want to be on stage right now at the end of the season or going into next season. That's what I'm gonna give you in today's video. That the Olympia, it's the thing that sets the tone. It's what really, gives you that idea of the criteria. So all athletes and all coaches can look to what is being placed here and be able to know, okay, that's what we need to be talking about, what we need to be putting on stage moving forward. So let's get down to it. It's going to be a long one today because, we got top 16, but stay with me the whole time. And I promise you, you'll learn a lot that will help you place better and do better on stage next season. So we have our top 3 on the screen here. Maureen has come back to retain her title, which is very crazy. She has not been Olympia champion since 2022, and she comes back and she takes it back. I had Maureen in my prediction videos placing lower in the top 5, like 5th. And that was because, with the way things have been shifting with Fit Model and what we've seen in a lot of pro events, we were looking at bigger, leaner athletes actually doing a bit better. But here we are, the judges kind of put Maureen in this spot, reset that tone and said, hey, this is what we want to be seeing on these stages. And it's very interesting, right? Ashlyn over here, 2nd place, okay? And then we have Jasmine over here in 3rd. So this is your top 3, which, at the Olympia, the top 3, it's going to generally be very close. And it is, again, very good examples of what judges want to see on stage. So as you look at this, let's break this down and let's go step by step for where bikini is going to be heading, which honestly, it's pretty shocking. So we look at Maureen here. She has, good shoulder fullness, good shape overall. Everything is there. Her biceps and triceps not detracting, not distracting. Her hair is covering this one right. So it's, again, just not a huge focal point on any bikini physique anyway, unless honestly you've overdone it, then it might be an issue. She doesn't have that. She's got, that good structure up top, that fullness that creates the top piece of her upside down triangle or hourglass shape. What we see next, is a sweep into the waist. So narrow waist for her. She's got a good oblique cut there, good line overall, good balance between the glutes and the quads and the hamstrings. This is a lot of shape, a lot of fullness, a lot of size. Instantly though, like even in our top 3, not the most muscle and not the leanest. So that is a big thing that she has come to retain this. Obviously, we need to look at the back pose. We need to look at that. But it is basically, in my opinion, thus far, just from what I saw, what I've already been looking at, like this is, the judging going towards, hey, we want a more attainable look in bikini. Yeah, maybe things were kind of getting a little ramped up because of Fit Model coming to play. Bigger girls, leaner girls start winning these pro events, placing higher. But we're going to reset that tone, and we want everybody to remember, like, bikini is not about the most muscle, and it's not about being the leanest. Like, in fact, as we go down these callouts, I bet you we're going to see that. We're going to see that go as we go all the way down to 16th place. We will probably see bigger and leaner athletes in those later callouts, not in the top here. So Maureen, again, she's got good fullness. She's got shape. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos on her. We're going to look at her look, compared to previous seasons. So subscribe if you're not. But here, again, even in just this top 3, not the biggest, not the leanest. She definitely has good fullness. She's definitely, a little bit on the softer side. We still get the oblique cut here. We still got glute separation, quad separation. But Maureen is never the biggest or the leanest athlete. And for her to come back and win this title here as the standard for bikini now, it's a pretty big indicator. Next season, judges are going for a more attainable look across the board here. Let's take a look over at Ashlyn here. Ashlyn has, that good overall shoulder shape. She's got a great taper in at the midsection, super narrow waist here. It creates that effect. Lower body-wise, we can see good glute development, good quads, good hamstrings, everything there. Now, what is the biggest difference, right? There's a few things. So she's definitely a little leaner. just a little bit, right? We can see some feathering going on here in that oblique. It's definitely cutting a little bit more than over here. Maureen's got a little bit more of that thicker oblique look, which actually comes from, conditioning. Like, she's probably got about the same level of muscularity there. Her conditioning's a little bit softer though, so it makes it appear a little bit deeper of an oblique line than it does over here on Ashlyn, where she's got a little bit more of that feathering going on because she's a lot leaner, right? So she doesn't have, any detraction going on from the biceps, the triceps, anything like that. What realistically I do see, maybe just a tad less fullness in the upper body and a tad less fullness in the glute too, right? We can kind of see that right here. This upper glute does not look as pronounced, as filled out as Maureen's does here. She's also not pulling as much lower body lines here through as Maureen does. And I think that again kind of comes down to the fullness. So she's a little leaner, maybe a little less full, and that may just be that little bit of a ticker there, this upper glute, a little bit up here, that puts it in the spot. But I mean, great, fantastic placing for Ashlyn. She just really came up and top 2. Wow. Nothing to scoff at. All these ladies, phenomenal job. Obviously, very good examples of criteria and standard in general. These are just the differences that I'm seeing here. Now, what we can see over here, looking at Jasmine, right? So Jasmine, another, fan favorite athlete. She's in the top here, top 3. Fantastic placing for her. Retains the same placing as she did last year at Olympia. And what we can see here is good overall shoulder shape. She does have a little bit more of that lat sweep. It sweeps into a very narrow waist. Good balance in her glutes and her quads. And hamstrings. Now, what I see that's different yet again here, so she's definitely coming leaner, right? Like, we can see that when you can track, the vein from her shoulder down into her bicep, down into her forearm, down into literally her wrist. She's lean. She's coming in lean. And a lot of people like that leaner look. I know a lot of people really like that look on Jazzy specifically, but basically, that is a big difference here from her to Maureen, right? Like, that is a massive difference in conditioning. She's definitely a lot tighter, a lot leaner. And that's why we do start to see a little bit more, even rectus abdominis, 6-pack separations going on here. We got a pretty good oblique cut. She has really good lines in her lower body condition wise. We're seeing all those markers, but she is showing lean up top. And that leaner look, I think, is the thing that continues, to have her fall into these spots here. She retained her exact same placing at this Olympia. So, it's one of those things where maybe that's working for her for now, because again, she's top 3 in this division. That's really, really good. But overall, that's what I'm seeing. That's, again, a difference. A little bit more lean, a little bit, she does have a good amount of muscle in the upper body, good fullness, good everything, good shape. Leaner though, Also, I will say her glutes do just look just a tad maybe out of balance here compared to the rest of her lower body. Like, we might have a little bit more of that glute development going on there. We will see when we get to the back. Obviously, that's our full story. And this is where, it gets to be a little bit more of a shocking part for a lot of people. I know a lot of people think that Maureen's win's a bit controversial, but I realistically don't see it at this point. Here's the crazy thing. We're not talking about Lauralie at all right now. She is not in the top 3. She didn't even make top 5. Folks. So I know a lot of people shocked about that. We're going to get down into those points here shortly, and we'll talk a lot more about Lauralie and why that may have happened. But for now, let's take a look at what we got going here. We got these 3 athletes, and what we can see right away is Maureen has that good shoulder shape, good fullness there. Again, bicep, tricep, not deterring. We're seeing mostly tricep from the back, obviously, but it's not taking away. Still get a good taper. Looking lower body-wise now. What are we looking at? We're looking at quads. We're looking at hamstrings. We're looking at glutes. We're looking at that upper glute being pronounced in full. We got the tie-in, that slight separation. Now, a lot of people always talk about Maureen not having the most development lower body in her glutes, so on and so forth. But realistically, if you look at it, it's hard to say she is not the most symmetrical, right? Like, she's definitely very, very symmetrical to what's going on up top. Very symmetrical to what's going on down here. And again, she is showcasing a fuller look. The muscles are popping. The glutes have that fullness. And there's nothing depleted in the upper glute. There's nothing depleted coming through in this tie-in. It's all very complete. It's all showcasing well. She is, again, showing softer, right? So we do see not as much definition up top, not even as much coming through the hamstrings. Like, she's showing the lines, but she is softest out of this top three, and that is the same case from the back. So again, a very big indicator in the judging, I think, that is saying, hey, we are bringing the bikini look, back towards its roots more. And this season has been wild. If you've been following the channel, that's really what it looked like it was doing, right? Like, we looked at it, Fit Model came into play. Okay, bikini almost instantly kind of boom, 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 it was coming down. It was like going with Fit Model, right? Like, they brought Fit Model in to make it a more attainable division for, more competitors to compete in, more women to get involved in the sport. And, it was really looking like that. Okay, well, that's great. And that seemed to trickle into bikini a bit, right? We started seeing a little bit more of, even honestly, the Maureen type of a look going on, where it was a little bit less muscular, a little bit softer, still very shapely, still a lot of muscle. But I'm talking about compared to, sometimes in bikini, we see very muscle dominant, very lean athletes. It started to do that. And then later season, it started to be, okay, a lot of, bigger, leaner bikini pros start winning events. Okay, what's going on there? And, maybe judges caught on to that. And they're like, okay, well, bikini's starting to get wild again. We got to kick it back. And, Maureen, with this look, she is the only one in the top, 10, even probably top 15, we'll see as we go, that has this. This is a very unique look. It is going to be, the most full and the softest of this top athletes, for sure, top 5 here. And, again, that's a very big thing that she's the one that wins Olympia, I think, especially after, she didn't even compete last year. There's a lot to say for these things, but very clear statement for all you bikini competitors. You're going to want to be focusing on your muscle fullness, your shape, bringing a very shapely physique, and, making sure your conditioning is on point, not too soft, but also definitely not too lean, because those athletes are, again, the shift is going away from that. So let's take a look at Ashlyn now. Ashlyn very clearly has, a lot of that good shape, a very similar look, honestly, to Maureen, hence why she's right there in second. Who knows where Ashlyn goes from here? She may be a future Olympia winner, time will tell. But let's see what we got. We got good shoulder shape. Everything tapers in pretty well here. Overall, it's all showcasing nicely. This is where I can see, though, just like I said, a little bit of that upper glute depleted. So a little bit less fullness here, right? Just a little bit. And that does make a difference when you're looking at Maureen, who's got the very filled out all the way there. Ashlyn has just a little bit of, that glute that is not totally filled out. We saw that in both poses there. So that's, again, an indicator, a little bit leaner, a little bit more depleted going on there. She still pulls through a good tie-in. She still has great overall shape. She has a good balance in the quads and everything with the hamstrings. But, her quads also do tend to pronounce a little bit more here in this back pose than Maureen's do. I think Maureen has a little bit more of a symmetrical look there with her full physique, that full up and down, left and right look, versus what Ashlyn does here. We start to get a little bit more of that quad line from her, and that can kind of indicate, again, she's just a little bit more muscular and a little bit leaner, and we're seeing that across the board. So I think that is the biggest difference in the placings between these two athletes. There's, really, that's going to be the thing. Ashlyn probably, if she came in a little bit softer and a little bit more filled out, who knows what could have happened. That might have been a first place for her. Drop in the comments if you think, Ashlyn should have had that, or if you think Jasmine should have had it. Let's take a look at Jasmine. So Jasmine, she showcases, again, very, very closely. She's got more delts coming to the party than any, of the other athletes here in this shot. So a little bit more of that, bigger look up top, definitely tapers in well, good overall shape. Everything is there. Lower body wise, it doesn't have the same 3D effect pronounced, right? So it's very interesting. Her glutes look, a little bit heavy from the front there. Maybe it's just opposing compared to, how tight her waist is. But lower body, we can see, overall that this is pretty symmetrical across the board here, but not as much of a 3D kind of pop coming from her glutes that I'm seeing here, right? Like Maureen's glutes very filled up, and the upper glute, even Ashlyn's is still more, even though hers is a bit depleted, pulls that tie-in through a bit more. We don't see as much of that, and that's, again, coming from like that muscle depth, that density of the glutes. So probably need a little bit more upper glute work, overall density, pull through that tie-in just a bit, and that may showcase well, but she is still very symmetrical. Also, her upper body just a tad in this back pose, I do think overpowers, right? It's not as symmetrical as what's going on down here. Definitely not as symmetrical as Ashlyn and Maureen here. So we are starting to see now, looking at top three, granted, we got to keep moving, to really get what's going on at this Olympia. Top three is going to be very close, but we are seeing very clear indicators right now, right? The direction of this division. Okay, so here we go. Now we got Maureen here in the middle. We're going to leave her in the middle of the whole video. We're going to start moving down placings. We got Amy over here in fourth, and we got Ashley K over here in fifth. So very interesting placing, across the board for these. I did have Amy in my top five. I did have Ashley in there. They are still making top five. They're on the lower end of it, though, for sure, right? Like a lot of people, I know. Just looking at your comments on YouTube, we're going to everything that a lot of you guys were thinking Ashley K could maybe win this one, Well, here's where we're at. So let's take a look at what the biggest differences are right out the gate. Amy, she always has a bit more of that upper body dominant look. She really does. She's got bigger shoulders. She got bigger biceps and triceps, bigger lats, right? Like she definitely has a bigger overall upper base, I would say. She's still showcasing a great taper into the midsection, good balance down to the lower body. But, for me, she always has a bit more of that muscle, still needs to refine that look. And I think that that's the thing where, I was thinking she could have placed higher because of maybe, all right, if Bikini's going to continue to follow the more aggressive look with the muscle and, the leanness, maybe she would be up there. But here again, she's in fourth, right? So that's kind of indicating a little bit of a shift away from that look again, because Maureen does not have that. Amy's got way bigger delts than Maureen. Amy's got bigger glutes than Maureen. Amy has, more muscle overall. It's very easy to say. Now, Amy did bring a softer look here, which is actually favorable to her, right? This is not as hard as we have seen her before. But what that tends to do also too, if you have any, muscle balance stuff that you need to work on there, it can make it a little bit more pronounced. And for me, her glutes are a little bit disproportionate to her physique here. And I think, that's been feedback that we've seen at previous events for her, previous, even, big events, Arnold, Olympia, stuff like that. This is what I think we're seeing here again. Her glutes just look a tad bit overpowering there. And again, her upper body is pretty freaking developed. So, she's got all that. It's more of a refinement. It's more of a reshaping. Keep in mind, these athletes in the top five are absolutely the standard for Bikini, what you should be looking at. And all of them are going to showcase their shape. All of them are going to showcase hourglass. All of them are going to have great conditioning. We're looking at the five in the division, top five in this division right now. So, it's all very good representations of what criteria is, but these are big, blatant differences, in my opinion. Amy to Maureen right there. Big, big differences, big, changes, differences that we are seeing that are going to play out really are going to trickle down to, even if it's your very first show as a competitor, especially going to trickle down to national level events and so on, right? So Ashley over here, Ashley's physique this year is, a little bit, it's not her best that I've seen, right? I think she has, a good shape overall, always tapers in well. She has that look. She has been previously a little bit upper body forward in some of the videos I've done. We can see balance in the glutes, the quads, the hamstrings, everything here. Her physique this year is just, it doesn't have the same pop to it in general, right? Like we're not getting as much of that fullness from the shoulders. We still get a good taper in here. It looks like her conditioning is a bit softer, which is good in this lineup. That's again, what seems to be the case. Actually, some of the leaner athletes that we would normally see come in maybe a little too lean or coming softer. So again, a big indicator of where this division is really heading right now. But overall, I'm seeing the balance between the glutes, the quads, and the hamstrings. Everything is there. It's just we're not getting as much of like an emphasis out of her physique there. Her next to Maureen, the biggest difference is the shape. It's the 3D effect of Maureen's physique. It's the overall pop that we're getting from, the glutes, from the shoulders, from the midsection here. Ashley still got that. It's just shapes out differently, right? And that's a thing where, again, you could have placed her higher. But when you get to the back, this is where, again, the party always is the final answer of what's really going on there. So we can see here that realistically, we got overall Maureen just showcasing the best symmetry out of the group. Amy's glutes do tend to look a little bit dominant here. They definitely tend to look more lower body dominant in general. We start to see those quad sweeps coming in that back pose. Really big indicator, again, of the muscularity, where Maureen's very symmetrical. It's really focused more on the glutes than it is anywhere else. And, Amy's got a bigger, more muscular look. Ashley over here, again, this is just what I'm seeing. It's not showcasing as much of that pop from really anything, right? Like, we're not getting as much pop from the glutes. We're not getting as much as that tie-in coming through here. It seems her muscle fullness was really kind of off at this one. Everybody above her here is getting a lot more of that 3D effect, that pop. Again, so for her to be in that spot, the fifth here, it's a fullness thing. Judges are really hammering in the fullness. They want to see more fullness. They want to see more fullness in bikini. And that is what we are seeing. Let's keep moving. And I appreciate you sticking with me. We got a lot more to talk about. We got a lot of athletes left to go. But we're going to keep rolling. And I promise you, it's going to make you better on stage next season. Now, biggest shocker of the day to pretty much everyone, including myself, who would have predicted Lauralie to maybe retain her title. Lauralie is in 6th place here, doesn't even crack the top 5. I don't know if there has been such a big upset in any recent competition like this, right? Like, this is massive. And we're going to talk about that. Let's also talk about Evie over here, who's in 7th, okay? So we can see right away, I know you're probably following the train with me now, that if you've been paying attention to what I've been saying whole video, what are the biggest differences that you already noticed? Okay, well, Lauralie, right? Lauralie came this year. She still has good shoulder shape. She's still got a good taper in. The lower body, it's all there. Everything is there. This is not, though, what was expected. I didn't expect to see Lauralie in this position. I didn't expect to see her in this placing. I didn't expect to see her physique really look like this at all. Her physique just really did, again, kind of lack a lot of the volume, a lot of that size, a lot of that muscle shape overall. She has still good shoulder shape, but it's not as full as what's going on with Maureen. Her midsection is still tight, but there's not as much pop coming from that oblique or anything else there. Lower body-wise, she always was kind of known for the glutes and the size there. It's not really showcasing that much here for whatever reason. And her quads tend to almost even start to really overpower what the glutes are doing, which I never really thought I would talk about on Lauralie's physique, based on years and years. So it seems she did some reshaping this year. She did some, changes, but it didn't seem to favor her, and it would appear that, the judges kind of lined up with that, where she's falling out of Olympia win to 6th place. That is a very big thing. So, we're also not getting a lot of that same level of condition in lines, where, she did bring a softer condition, probably, what she should have done, but it's not really pulling through a lot of those lines for her. And that, to me, again, is an indicator of the muscularity not being as filled out. Maybe the peak was missed. I don't know. Even just seeing how she was presenting, it seems like her presentation was also off at Olympia a bit, right? It just seemed that was the way it is. And, that's what happens. There's nothing wrong with it. This is a sport where you got to bring your best, and, things can change. Peaks can be missed. Other stuff happens. But I know a lot of people were blindsided by Lauralie not even, being in the top. But when you look at these two side by side, the winner, it's pretty apparent how we get there. Maureen, again, just a lot of fullness, a lot of shape. Everything is there, and she pulls through the condition just right. Lauralie kind of missed that mark on the fullness for sure, and that did dictate her condition a bit. She looks a little bit more, watery. Her physique looks a lot softer. We really don't even see any of those normal lines that we would see. Her glutes don't look as pronounced. Even her upper glute almost does. Even from this point, look a little bit depleted here. So some shocking things going on with Lauralie's physique. We will have to see where she goes from here, but, it's definitely going to be filling out and doing a little bit more to get there. But, Maureen, if this is the look they want now, Maureen may be back in the title spot for quite a bit of time, okay? Let's look at Evie now. So Evie is another athlete here, again, bringing a bigger, leaner look. She's got a very narrow waist, good upper body shape and taper. Lower body is filled out. We can see the glutes, quads, hamstrings, everything is all balanced. So again, keep in mind at Olympia, nobody's going to be outrageously off. We're not going to be like, oh, wow, that was insanely. Everybody's in the zone. Biggest differences, though, we can see, right? Clearly, Evie's got more upper body development, right? She's got bigger shoulders. She's got more density up top. She's also showcasing leaner than Maureen. So, again, that's another big thing. She also is one of the athletes I start to get a little bit of that bicep-tricep going, right? Where you start to see bicep and tricep are a little bit more developed, a little bit more pronounced, a little bit leaner too. More muscle up top is what is not being favored at this year's Olympia. And we're seeing that move through the placings. Now, looking at the midsection, very narrow waist here, good balance between the glutes and the quads and the hamstrings overall, but we're not getting as much, emphasis in that lower body lines down here in the glute separation, the quad separation, all this as we are up top. So she's got a little bit of a leaner upper body than she does lower body. Conditioning discrepancies like that, are something judges want to look for. Maureen's conditioning is very even up and down, right? It is very, very even. Same with Lauralie, even though, she's a little bit softer here than she normally is, at least it's consistent. This is a leaner look up top, not as lean lower body, right? Where maybe balancing that out does favor it. Probably, honestly, it's just softening the upper body, but she is also a tad aggressive up top with the shoulder development, the arm development, stuff like that. Let's go to the back, because that's where we always say the full story is being told, and it will be told yet again right here. So instantly, what we were just talking about with Lauralie, right? Very apparent that there's just not as much pop coming from her physique. It's kind of crazy. We still see good shoulder shape up top. It honestly, is very balanced in that look there, but then you get to the lower body and things just don't look like Lauralie. It's, her upper glute is definitely not as filled out, not as full as we normally see it. Her glutes, her tie-ins are not really showing that much like we would normally see. And overall, this balance here is just not showcasing as well. We're not getting a lot of that 3D, a lot of that pop. You look at Maureen again. Big differences here. Big differences in fullness and condition. So those that, again, a lot of people blindside, a lot of people are like, how did Maureen even win this? When you start to really look at the nitty gritty here, it really does add up. Like I saw people commenting, Maureen has no glute development. Well, she has more actually, and it's filled out and showcasing better than anyone else that we've looked at in the top thus far. Okay, so that's very interesting. Keep in mind when you're looking at the photos too, that looks quite a bit different than what is being seen by the judges on the event stage. So those of you that are on TikTok and Instagram and think you know more than the judges, I tell you, all right, everybody's got their favorites and everybody wants to come up with reasons why things happen. But the truth is we got to look at what's actually going on here, right? And we can see overall that this, again, is showcasing clearly to this point where there's some big differences there in that 3D, in that fullness overall of that physique, Lauralie to Maureen. Okay, Evie again from the back here, we got good shoulder shape, tapers in, everything's there. She's showing leaner here in general. I think that's the biggest thing. That fullness is not really coming through as much in the upper glute. It's not really coming through. This tie-in is really more so a lot leaner. And it's not as much coming from, the fullness of the muscle pushing through the skin, filled out with the proper level condition. Also, her glutes do tend to overpower from at least this pose here. What's going on with quads and hamstrings? A lot more glute density and size and shape. I think if she, evened out her conditioning and played with the fullness a bit, it would be a massive difference as to, what we would see her doing on stage, and, potentially future Olympias beyond that. Okay, so let's see. Now we're going to move down. We're still rolling. Keep rolling with me. If you made it this far, by the way, and you didn't subscribe yet, come on now. You're killing me. I want to know your thoughts too. Comment. This is a crazy turn for bikini right now. It's crazy. Do you like it? You like this turn for it? Or you want less? You want more? What are we looking at here? All right. So now we are moving down here into 8th and 9th. Pretty interesting. Where we got Vanya over here in 8th, and we got Maria over here in 9th. So some familiar faces, a lot of athletes people know. I had Vanya in my top 5. Very interesting how things kind of played out. So what we can see, Vanya's physique this year, she's got good overall shoulder shape. Everything tapers in pretty well. She always has that compacted, very shapely look. Everything is there. Glutes, quads, hamstrings. Biggest differences by far on her physique compared to Maureen Couple things. One, arms. Okay, she definitely does have a little bit more bicep tricep. I don't really think that's a huge detractor for her, but what it does do is it makes the shoulders maybe showcase a little bit less shape, right? That's one of the advantages, right? When I'm training bikini compares, I'm always focused on this, making sure the arms do not overpower the shoulder because that kills your shape up top. So for her, she has a little bit more of that bicep tricep. Okay, not too crazy, but maybe just pulls away from the delt just a little bit to make that difference right there. Biggest thing, though, clearly, is she's a lot leaner. She is much leaner than Maureen is here. Much, much leaner, right? And I always can see that a lot on pros with their their not standing leg, in other words, right? Like their back leg in this pose. You always can see it. If you start seeing quads and stuff feathering up, all this, that's a lot of times going to be an indicator how lean they are. Maureen has 0 of that. Vanya's got a lot more of it kind of showcasing there. So she's also got lines here. She's got lines coming through the quad. She's got lines in the hamstring. She's got adductor line. She's got oblique line. She's got rectus abdominis. She's got, a very much leaner, less filled out look. She's got a lot of shape still, but this, I think, if, softer and more filled out, okay, right in that top again, just like I had predicted her, right? But she brought leaner, a little bit more depleted look. That's, again, not seeming to be favored right here at this year's Olympia. Okay, Maria here. Now we're going to look at Maria. So good overall shoulder shape here. Another one where the bicep and tricep do instantly pronounce to me, though. See that right away. Good tapering at the midsection, lower body-wise. It seems to be pretty solid as far as the muscularity we're seeing. Good balance. For her, again, it's one of those things where biggest differences here are going to come down to the balance of the shape, right? So she's got a lot of glutes. Maureen's got more balanced glutes. That's the biggest difference, right? Her quad structures here, it showcases a little bit heavy, a little bit dominant. Maureen doesn't have that. It's more symmetrical, more balanced. Upper body, I'm not 100% sure if the bicep tricep play in, but to me, it does throw a little bit of that in there, throws a little bit of that into the mix. But from here, she just looked very lower body dominant compared to even her own upper body. So definitely going to be a difference when you're looking at Maureen, who is ultra symmetrical here, the most symmetrical athlete we have looked at now in the top 10, basically. Okay, so let's look from the back, get the full story. Some very clear similarities, also clear differences. Vanya just seems to, again, have, a very lean look. A lot of that shape going on is coming from being, overly conditioned. Not as full. A lot of heavy quads here. Could just be this angle a bit, but, this tie-in's coming through good. Glute structure looks good. Her shape looks really, really good. It just came too lean and not filled out. I think that's what it is across the board. That's what I'd say. So again, these are minor tweaks. Keep in mind, everybody, this is top 10 in the world. These are all still very good examples, but to break it down for you all, this is what the difference is. Even looking at her tie-ins are showing much harder than Maureen's. So again, judges really hammering the look, balance, symmetry, and softness in bikini right now. And that's across the board. All right, so Maria here, let's take a look. What we can see from Maria, good tapering, good shape overall, good glute, structure here, but it does seem to be just a little bit more out of bounds. Also, we are getting those quad lines, those kind of quad sweeps, in other words, that I always talk about in wellness. I'm seeing that here too. So the quad sweep, indicates, again, a lot of muscle dominance. Not on Maureen, on a lot of the athletes below her, right? So too much muscle, too lean in bikini is not winning right now, folks. It is not winning. And I think it's a massive indicator for what we're going to see next season. All right. So 10th, Ariana over here. And then we have Reyna here in 11th. We're moving into our lower groups now. This is where you start to see bigger changes, outside that top 10, definitely outside that top 5. You did start to see that on some of those other athletes we just looked at. Let's dive in a little bit more. So Ariana here. Good overall shoulder shape. I will say traps looking a bit pronounced to me here in this pose. She has very big shoulders, a lot of width going on here, a lot of size. Again, bicep and tricep here is coming into play. So I'm seeing that instantly. More muscle up top, more, width, more of a bigger look, a little bit more of a trap type of a look there. Lats even looking wider and bigger than the athletes we've seen before. Very narrow waist, so that's good, right? She's got this taper. Lower body, though, doesn't have that same emphasis, that same pop, that same oomph as the upper body does. So her glutes are there, but upper glute looks flattened. It looks more depleted. Her quads are looking that same way, and same with hamstrings. It almost looks like she's a very, upper body dominant look here. So again, max symmetry is what judges want bikini. We're not seeing that here necessarily on her physique. So I think that's a big indicator. Also looks a bit to be upper body powerful, dominant there in that zone. She is showcasing as well, extremely lean. So like we're seeing a lot of feathers here. We're seeing some in the quads, even like we're seeing lines all over. Again, this back leg, everything, bigger, leaner. Placing, lower. She's coming in at 10th here. So again, that indicates, that's a massive difference in look from Maureen to Ariana here. Big difference. So if you're not seeing the writing on the wall, if you're still convinced there's no way Maureen should have won this, she's the only athlete that looks like this. So this is the criteria. This is the standard. She won it before because she had that. Judges are bringing that back. They want that look back. They don't want, the bigger, leaner athletes winning Olympia right now. Let's look at Reyna here. Okay, so Reyna, good overall shoulder shape, tapers in at the midsection here. Everything is complete. Glute balance, upper glute definitely looking a little bit depleted here. Quads looking a bit heavier, and her hamstrings, everything is there. She does seem to lack the same upper body fullness, the same upper body, kind of development that we're seeing in the athletes above. That shape, that size that brings it through. She has a good taper in. Conditioning seems to be relatively good. But I will say the lower body, it needs a little bit more of a symmetry here, right? We can see a little bit of quads dominance, a little bit more upper glute is needed here for sure, and that's probably going to be the main thing. Let's see from the back. So here we go again. You can see Ariana, very shoulder, a lot of shoulder, biggest shoulders out of the group we've seen anywhere in the top 10 so far. Really showcasing that. She still has that killer taper, but, it's bigger upper body. Bigger upper bodies in bikini are out of the circle at this point. That's not what's wanting to be seen on stage. More shape, more overall fullness, but not just more development, right? In lower body, this is where we can see, again, her quads and her hamstrings are really overpowering what's going on with the glutes a lot, I think there. You can kind of see that for sure. Upper glute probably is looking a bit depleted. Tie-in's not pulling through as much. And again, just her lower body in general does not have that same level of fullness, does not have that same level of balance, does not have that same level of symmetry. When we keep getting these quads sweeping from the back on a lot of these bikini comparisons, this is going against criteria in a lot of ways. It's going against. And, a lot of athletes start to get it, and it seems judges are really pulling that back. They don't want that look. She's also super lean, right? And that's really what's going on here with Ariana. Now looking at Reyna. Good shoulder shape, tapers in, everything's there. We're not getting as much muscle, as much development, as much pop, as much fullness anywhere on her physique in general. So, when we start to move down and place things a little bit more, you do start to see things at Olympia level where, okay, sometimes it is coming down to needing actually a little bit more muscle in the shoulders, needing more glute development, needing more upper glute development, needing to, again, kind of balance what that lower body development is doing in general. So for her, that's what I would see. She's not showing that same level of fullness, that same muscularity to the glute, the same anything as Maureen is at this spot, which again would be pretty obvious moving down into these placings. Okay. So now we're going to go into our last kind of, couple athletes here. We got Jourdain and we have Jordan. So Jourdain over here is coming in at 12th and Jordan over here is coming in at 13th. So again, these are athletes that generally we do see, pretty much showcasing a lot of the same stuff I've been talking about this entire video, but I'm going to go ahead and hit it for you again. Jourdain has, good overall shoulder shape here. It does taper in very well. She always has that super narrow waist, torso showing through, good balance. It appears between the lower body, the glutes, quads. But, on her physique, what I do tend to see is what I've been seeing with a lot of people, going down these callouts. Bicep, tricep do stand out. A little bit more development there is happening, right? And it kind of does throw off that shoulder shape a bit. She's also showcasing a tad leaner upper body for sure than Maureen is. Like we can see more lines even in the delt and everything else coming through, tighter in the midsection. Whether or not these things make a massive difference, it does seem to make a difference in the placings as we move down. Lower body, she does showcase good overall glute structure and shape, but her glutes do kind of pop a little bit more than the rest of her physique. Quads, hamstrings kind of look like they are maybe a tad behind what the glutes are doing at this point. And I think that that's the main thing, right? She is showcasing definitely too, just overall, a tad leaner. We can see a little bit more in the legs there, definitely, than what's going on in Maureen's physique. So bigger, leaner, again, and Jordan is no exception to that. Jordan always looks very big. She always looks very developed. She's, toned down her look a lot, honestly, because we were seeing her very lean, very big, some other events. And, she's still coming in 13th here, but that look has been a little bit reshaped. She is definitely upper body more dominant. A lot of bicep and tricep. We start seeing, even forearms looking pretty developed here and, lean, showcasing through there. Good taper in. She does have good balance, good structure. I think that honestly, if she could just always, not always, but my focus has always been, her upper body looks bigger, looks leaner. I think if she could really hone that in, it would bring her much higher placings at these bigger competitions like this. But overall, good balance, good shape. She has a really good, everything coming through. I do start to get a little bit of traps up there too, though, which again just indicates, more muscle up top. Let's look from the back here. Full story's always told. So Jordan, good overall shape here, pulls in pretty well, everything up top, but lower body looks definitely not the same as Maureen, as far as fullness goes. So we're not seeing as much of that upper glute. We're not seeing as much of that overall glute. So it's always interesting to see the athletes that seem to have a lot of glute in that front pose based on how they're posing. And then when you get to the back, it's just not really showcasing the same. Because from here, her glutes do not have that fullness. They don't have that same pop. We're not seeing really even that tie-in come through all that much. We're seeing more quads and hamstrings kind of throwing off her balance from her glutes even, honestly. So a little bit more reshaping, getting that fullness, getting that 3D. This is what Maureen does best. She brings through that 3D. You see it, that tie in, the fullness, that shape. I mean, it is really locked down there. So again, that's the biggest difference we're seeing across the board. What do you guys think? Comment, let me know. I know it's a long video. I appreciate you being here. We're almost done. But I wanted to make sure, by the time you finish this, you're like, okay, I know exactly what to be focused on for bikini this year, what I need to work on. I need to work on my shape. I need to work on my condition. I don't want to get too hard. I don't want to get too big. I want to keep my balance right? That's what we're doing. So if you like these videos, please comment, give me a thumbs up, share it. Okay, so Jordan. Jordan again, she just has a little bit like her look refinement is really what she needs to work on. She has a great shape all the time, but it's really more refining, right? So we need to, see a little bit better balance between the glutes and the quads and the hamstrings, pulling that tie in a little bit more. Her conditioning was just a little interesting this event where she was very lean up top, not as much coming through in the lower body. That kind of conditioning discrepancy is always noted by judges, seen across the board, and, again, indicated by 13th place here compared to Maureen, which has very, very, very balanced conditioning up and down. I think those are the biggest differences. Again, more muscle in conditioning is continuing to move down versus others, okay? All right. So we got Sally Ann here, and she's in 14th, and we got Victoria over here, and she is in 15th. So we are going to now look at basically the last, I think I have one more. Yeah, we're going to do 16. So one more athlete after this one we will take a look at. But let's look here right now and see what we got with these two. So, you start to move into these lower placings. Keep in mind, there's like 71 freaking bikini pros here at this Olympia. So I am not going to do the full class, but when you start to move down, they stop counting at 16, right? Like they stop counting. They stop, this is 17, 21. Well, there's none of that. So it just moves down and down and down the list at that point because everybody generally starts to look so similar. A lot of stuff that they're going to need to work on is going to be pretty similar. So what we will see here is two athletes that are basically in the same spot with a different look, and that's pretty much across the board, right? So let's see, Sally Ann here, good overall shoulder shape, tapers in pretty well. Lower body seems to be balanced, seems to be in a good spot. She's got, everything coming together there. Do think of maybe just a tad bicep and tricep here coming through. But also in general, I would bet that when we get to the back pose, that's going to be the biggest thing. We're not there yet, but we will be. It does look very good, but overall, the differences are going to stand out. I think maybe just a little bit too much going on in this muscle in the lower body. We're going to find out in just a minute. Looking over here now at Victoria, she's got good shoulder shape, tapers in, bicep and tricep again, showing up so much. Bikini compares this season, avoid the bicep tricep. I have my bikini compares when I'm training do very little. Sometimes they do none because, again, you don't want to pronounce those too much. I'm just seeing that on so many of these competitors after Maureen here at this point. Tapering at the midsection is good. Lower body, upper glute is looking a bit depleted here. Still got overall good glute fullness. Not as much muscle coming from the lower body. So it's interesting to see, you start to go down in these lower placings at this. We see a lot more lower body development here, maybe kind of overdoing what's going on up top, and we see the opposite going on over here, really, right, where it's not as full. It needs a little bit more fullness. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how the physiques really start to shape out at that lower level. And when we get here to the back, this is where we can see Sally Ann, good overall shoulder shape, tapers in, everything's good. Lower body doesn't have that same fullness, doesn't have that same pop, doesn't have that same 3D effect, and the quads and the hamstrings are, she may have some of the biggest quad sweeps from the back that we've seen on any of these competitors. So I think, again, that's kind of throwing the criteria a bit. That's where judges are saying, hey, we don't want to be seeing this wellness S-type quad development on the bikini athletes. So, for her, a little bit more balance between the glutes and the quads and everything to kind of bring together, I think is really going to be the key there. And looking over here at Victoria, she's got very pronounced upper body, very pronounced delts. It throws it off for sure compared to what's going on down here. She's got good shape in the glutes, but the upper glute definitely flattened out, a bit depleted there. Not as much of that tie-in coming through. And again, we're still seeing a little bit more of those sweeps coming through. So some similar looks coming into these lower placings of the top here. One more athlete we're going to take a look at. Adair, okay, so she's coming in 16th. She's the first one that's a 16th on the NPC News website. So at that point, everybody, it says just 16th for the rest, all 71 of them. So yeah, we don't know exact placings as it goes, honestly, but this is the last one we're going to review for today. So Adair, good overall shoulder shape. She doesn't have as much of that fullness in the top as Maureen does. That's pretty apparent. She does showcase a little more trap too. I think that's a key factor to always be noting as a bikini competitor. And again, I do start to see a little bit more of that bicep, tricep really coming through, where good taper in, everything's there. Lower body, we see good balance, we see good structure. Her glutes do kind of overpower what's going on with the hamstrings. Her quads do tend to even overpower in general what's going on in this front post. So leaner, a little more muscular, 16th in this group at least, for the sake of what we're talking about with placings. And what we can see here, same thing, taper, everything's there. Triceps pretty pronounced. Like I was saying, a lot more of that's showing through than what we're seeing on Maureen here. Something to note either way. And lower body, it doesn't have that same pop. It doesn't have that same 3D effect. It doesn't have as much upper glute as Maureen does here. Not as much of that tying coming through. So, again, it's pretty similar what we're looking at across the board. This is your top three. This is what we're looking at. And Maureen, out of all of this 16 competitors we reviewed today, probably the most filled out, the most shape, overall just kind of showcasing through. The most fullness overall in every muscle, and the softest across the board. That to me is a massive statement. A very good direction for bikini, though. I think it's a very good direction. I have never been, the entire time I've been coaching, I've never been the one who really likes when bikini's getting ramped up and it goes through these waves. I really don't like it when bikini's getting too big and it's getting too lean, because it becomes very unattainable, especially for athletes that want to stay natural, things like that, right? I think that this direction, the Maureen look that was popular for a bit, and she's come back now, retained this title, won it again, in other words, I think that it is an ideal look for bikini, because this will trickle down, folks. This trickles down to every level. This could be your first show. They're going to be looking for, fullness, shape, and softer level conditioning. Compared to, again, very aggressive muscle, very aggressive lean veins and everything else, striation looks. This is bikini, and this is where bikini should be. And I think it's a clear stamp that, more than ever, the emphasis is on, hey, we don't want everybody in bikini to have to think they have to be so big, so lean, so hard. We want you to have shape, we want you to have muscle, we want you to have condition, but we don't want it to be super unattainable. I think it's overall a great thing. I'm very excited for it, honestly. Being a coach in this industry who works with athletes all the time, it's a very good thing to not have to make people, push to extremes with cardio, with diets, with everything. And you really, this type of a look you can focus on in very sustainable and healthy ways. And I think it's a good thing. So that's my opinion. I want to know what yours is. Sorry if this video was extremely long. I've been here a while, but I want to make sure we were getting all the points. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it makes a lot of sense. And, I want to know what your direction is. What do you think? Do you think that it's the right direction for bikini? Do you think it's the wrong one? Drop in the comments. Let me know. Thank you for watching. Coach Ryan is out.